Now, Kodachrome is the GOAT. It's the legendary color film that you simply can't get anymore. It doesn't exist. And even if you found a pack from 20 years ago that had been stored perfectly in the freezer, you can't even get it developed.
I heard a ringing bell this morning, and it woke me from a dream.
Kodachrome. Kodachrome 64.
This is my grandfather's last roll of film.
A love affair with Kodachrome film.
Most of my best photographs were shot on Kodachrome.
The color is absolutely amazing. And with digital, there's lots of filters that kind of try to emulate it, to have that warm look, have those browns, but it's just not quite there.
My Kodachrome film recipe.
And I try to replicate the colors from the Kodachrome applied into digital.
Digital always tends to lean with reds and oranges and greens, not these luscious, kind of smooth, warm browns. That's why legendary photographers like Steve McCurry shot almost exclusively with this. Now, nothing will ever replace Kodachrome, but I've been working for years and I've just finished Generation 3. Well, almost finished. As we do this video, I'm going to be tinkering with the final details to update Kodachrome 64 to Gen 3 in my Filmist pack. And even if you don't use that, I'm going to show you along the way, color is still very important. And getting the color of Kodachrome 64 was not easy. So today I'm going to go use the afternoon light with a model, and we're going to take some more portraits. I want to do some more of those skin tone tests because it's one of the most difficult things to get in any profile, and we're going to nail it. But Kodachrome 64 has to work on everything. So let's take a look at some of the results I'm getting. One of the things that Kodachrome does in spades is whether you're shooting the streets or culture or portraits, the tones are always just amazing, like every single time, because instead of kind of that red oranginess, it has this rich kind of brown coffee kind of undertone. Now, I test with film and digital all the time, all types of photos, portraits and streets and landscapes, so we can test those colors, because it's not just this hipster fad. By studying where we came from and the nuance of organic film, it helps us to see digitally more organically. Now, the thing with Kodachrome is the reds, the yellows, everything works differently. So I can take a filter of something like Portra 400. I shoot Portra 400 film, I do tests, I compare them side by side, and there's a certain consistency to it. It's a great film. It's also not easy to replicate because film in general is not easy to replicate on digital files because digital files are harsher, they roll off differently. Kodachrome colors really are like no other film. They're not like Velvia, they're not like Portra. So why is it so important? We have digital cameras, they have their color science, which, as I explained in a recent video, is not all it's cracked up to be, because you can quickly adjust that with white balance and sliders. But the look of Kodachrome is almost something that you would never achieve just manually tweaking around and editing. You have to do things with the channels. The reds go really dark. You have to switch kind of the oranges and the greens so that they merge into the reds in a sort of warmth, but while maintaining the depth of those reds. If you look at Kodachrome masters like Steve McCurry, if you look at the old ads, I went all the way back to old magazines in the archives that were talking about comparing Kodachrome 64 to 25 and how it handled dynamic range better than other slide films, things like that. It was those little nuances that gave Kodachrome the edge, but it's also those nuances that make Kodachrome really difficult to replicate digitally. There's sort of a cocoa chocolatey brown to it, whereas most of the time in digital, it's more reds, oranges, greens. Now, think about the things we often run into editing digital. Here's a good example. Look at this photo. It's really lovely. It's got great tones. It's not that the digital files are bad. There's many ways in which we can edit them. The difficulty is in the nuance. This is what people are always talking about when they debate about cameras having better skin tones and things like that. Film, even though it comes with lots of complications, kind of had these inherently better skin tones. You didn't get a film photo that just way exaggerated the oranges in one photo, and in the next photo they looked perfect. On digital, you do. Okay, so I was doing testing on this photo here. It looks great, but now go into the details. Notice how we're getting this kind of pink magenta. This is something that happens a lot in digital. Frankly, it happened in film as well if you developed even slightly off, where you get this sort of magenta cast to the shadows or to the skin tones. But I see this a lot in skin tones on digital, and it's really hard to get rid of. What you want to do is isolate those colors. But it's not as simple as just shifting all the oranges or all the reds, because you'll end up changing the theme of the whole photo. This river is actually really cool. So we're going to do some portraits down here as well. And what I'm really doing, I'm shooting some film on the contacts today, but what I'm really doing is we're doing more portraits, trying things on different cameras. I want to make sure the skin tones on Kodachrome 64 really have that richness of the original Kodachrome. And that's one of the hardest things to get, is we can test these colors, we can compare them with different films, with different comparisons from the past, comparing those films. And through a lot of time and a lot of research, we've got a Kodachrome that is really, really good. Eso. See? I've spent so many hours and years, honestly, working on this. And I haven't done a video on Kodachrome in the past because I couldn't quite get it. It wasn't quite there, and now it is. And just look at the way this looks on, frankly, anything you put it on. It's amazing. Now I can show you my settings on the screen that I'm using in Lightroom and correspondingly in Capture One, etc. to get this. And if you look, you can see that there's a lot of work being done on the HSL, on the hue, on the color channels, the lightness, and I'm pushing things in directions that you oftentimes wouldn't. Take the reds, for example. If you darken reds, they sometimes seem more saturated, even though the saturation of the reds is actually pulled down. So the intensity of certain colors is really important. Is you can see that I'm going into curves. I'm going into the red and green and blue curves. I'm going into more specific advanced color or point color to try and refine it a little bit more. Digital tends to have harsh roll-off between colors, between tonal values, and it makes getting this film-like nuance, especially with a rich look like Kodachrome, a bit harder. But I think I've done pretty well. From going back and studying some of the Kodachrome greats and the photos, from my own samples and slides that I've looked at over the years. The reason I haven't done a Kodachrome video before now is because while I have tinkered with my Kodachrome profiles in Filmist, I never felt like they were quite good enough. And this project, in my latest update of Filmist, where I was working on slide films, like updating Velvia 100, like working on little details in Portra, things like that, I said, no, Kodachrome on digital can be amazing. We just have to go deeper. Kodachrome was not a standard E6 process like slide films like Velvia today. And while it probably had more dynamic range than most positive films we're familiar with, it was still a positive film. That's why you don't see me pushing the shadows way up or trying to do some HDR thing with this. Now, if I'm editing, like in Lightroom, you'll see me go to something like one of the ChemKit mods to expand the dynamic range, to pull the contrast, to push the contrast, to get the look I want. But in the baseline preset that I'm making here for Lightroom for Capture One, I'm trying to stay as true to the real Kodachrome 64 as possible. If you want to experiment with this yourself, you can look at kind of my references, the way I'm working with channels, but ultimately you really have to dig deep into the nuances. And sometimes it's just moving a curve or a point like 1 or 2 and finding that balance that really represents that median beauty that Kodachrome 64 gave us. I'm going to keep working on this. I'm going to keep making it better, but I think we've got a pretty amazing Kodachrome here, and I will leave you with some more images. Bueno, sígueme. Now, what I found with Kodachrome is It has really rich distinctions, whether you're talking about glowing evening sunset or whether you're talking about shadows in a street corner, in a market stall. There's this certain nuance, there's this magicalness where even though there's rich color, everything kind of rolls into this rich, warm, almost coffee, chocolatey like feel. What most people do is they turn up color grading to warm, they turn the white balance up. Those can be great tools for quick adjustment of the color depending on what camera, what look we're trying to match. But none of those actually work to get the nuance. Making Kodachrome 64 Gen 3 has been really cool because while my previous generations were these great presets, they were nice formulas, this really captures the feel. If you use my Filmist, go and try this. Let me know what you think. If you don't use my Filmist, at least go download the free pack. I'll put a link in the comments, and there's some other great films, like one of my Portra films in there. And if you want to do neither one of those, at least play with the concepts we've talked about, with the curves and the nuances, and maybe make your own variant of Kodachrome and get that rich beauty that we can no longer have in our film cameras. I'm Gavin, and we'll see you next time.
In a dream.